Principal Montgomery of Worthington Academy always looked down on Sarah Collins. Every day, he made sure everyone knew she was just a farmer's daughter who didn't belong in his prestigious school. He mocked her simple clothes, her packed lunches, and the mud on her shoes from helping on the farm before class. But Principal Montgomery never bothered to learn anything about Sarah's father, John Collins. He never asked why this simple farmer could afford the Academy's expensive tuition. He never wondered about the truth behind the Collins family. Today, as a gleaming Rolls-Royce pulls up to the school's entrance, everyone is about to learn an unforgettable lesson about judging a book by its cover. What secrets has the quiet farmer been keeping all these years? The leather journal's pages crackled softly as Sarah Collins made her morning entries, her handwriting neat despite the pre-dawn darkness. Through her bedroom window, stars still glimmered in the sky, their light mixing with the soft glow of her desk lamp. She recorded the previous day's crop yields, equipment maintenance schedules, and a brief note about the morning's predicted frost, all before most of her classmates had even stirred in their beds. October 15th, she wrote, then paused, her pen hovering over the paper. Another day of pretending. The words came unbidden, and she quickly crossed them out. Her father had taught her better than to indulge in self-pity. At 16, Sarah moved with the quiet efficiency of someone much older, someone who understood that every minute counted. She pulled on her work clothes, sturdy jeans and a thick flannel shirt, before slipping her feet into the rubber, boots that would later draw such disdain in Worthington Academy's marble halls. The farmhouse kitchen was already warm when she entered, the coffee maker gurgling its morning song. Her father, John Collins, sat at the ancient oak table, his own leather-bound notebook open before him. His eyes, sharp despite the early hour, met hers with familiar warmth. "Morning sunshine," he said, sliding a steaming mug toward her. "Sleep well." Sarah nodded, wrapping her hands around the mug. "The quarterly reports are done," she said, pulling her journal from her pocket. "We're up 12% from last harvest." John's eyes crinkled with pride. While other fathers and daughters might discuss boys or movies over breakfast, the Collins family spoke the language of agriculture and finance. Sarah had been learning the business since she could write, though few at Worthington Academy would believe the depth of her knowledge. "Your mother would be proud," John said softly, his hand briefly touching the wedding ring he still wore. "She always said you had her head for numbers." Sarah smiled, though her heart ached at the mention of her mother. 3 years had passed, but some mornings the loss felt as fresh as yesterday. "I should head out," she said, finishing her coffee. "The south field needs checking before school." The morning air bit at her cheeks as she walked the familiar path between the rows of corn. Their farm spread across 500 acres, though only the front portion was visible from the main road. Most people saw the weathered barn and modest farmhouse and made their assumptions. They never noticed the state-of-the-art irrigation systems, the solar panels cleverly concealed behind the old-style windmill, or the satellite dishes that kept them connected to global agricultural markets. Sarah checked the soil moisture sensors, their readings automatically uploading to her tablet, another secret hidden in plain sight. The Collins farm was as much silicon as soil, though they maintained their simple appearance carefully. Her father had taught her that true success didn't need to announce itself. A text message buzzed on her phone. "Meet you at the lockers? Maya." Maya Chen was the only other scholarship student in their grade, though her family's circumstances were genuinely modest. She was also the only person at Worthington who knew something of the truth about the Collins farm, if not its full extent. Sarah quickly finished her rounds and headed back to the house. In her room, she exchanged her work clothes for the required Worthington uniform, pleated skirt, blazer, and polished shoes. The transformation always felt like stepping between worlds. She tucked her worn leather journal into her bag, a simple canvas one rather than the designer brands her classmates carried. The journal was both her connection to the farm and her shield against their scorn. Let them mock her quaint record-keeping. The same careful notes that tracked their farm's success would one day help her run the entire operation. As she walked down the gravel driveway, Sarah glanced back at the farmhouse. Somewhere in her father's study, behind the rustic decor, sat documents revealing the true scope of Collins' agricultural enterprises. 5 farms across 3 states, contracts with major food distributors, and a research partnership with the state university. But for now, she would play her part, the humble farmer's daughter trying to fit into a world that thought it was above her. The school bus appeared at the end of the drive, right on schedule. Sarah straightened her shoulders, preparing for another day of careful pretense. In her bag, the leather journal pressed against her side, a reminder of who she really was and what she was working toward. Sometimes the hardest part of having a secret wasn't keeping it. It was knowing when it would finally be time to let it out. Principal Charles Montgomery's office was designed to intimidate. Dark mahogany paneling covered the walls, broken only by framed accolades and certificates. The centerpiece, mounted directly behind his desk, was an ornate Heritage Society award, its gold lettering proclaiming for outstanding contribution to educational excellence and traditional values. Sarah sat rigidly in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her uniform immaculate except for a small smudge of mud on her shoes. She'd tried to clean them thoroughly after her morning farm work, but some evidence always remained. "Miss Collins," Montgomery began, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, "do you know why I've called you in today?" The Heritage Society Award caught the morning light, casting a golden glow that seemed to form a halo around the principal's silver hair. Sarah had seen him polish it personally one morning before school started. "No, sir," she replied, though she had her suspicions. Yesterday's economics presentation had drawn more attention than she'd intended. Montgomery picked up a paper from his desk, her essay on agricultural futures markets and their impact on small farming communities. "Your economics teacher, Mr. Patterson, brought this to my attention. He seems to think it shows unusual insight." The pause before unusual carried weighted implications. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her hands tightened on her journal. "Thank you, sir," she said carefully. "Miss Collins." Montgomery leaned forward, his voice taking on what he probably thought was a paternal tone. "We must discuss the issue of authenticity." The word hung in the air between them. Through the window, Sarah could see students crossing the manicured quad, their designer bags swinging carelessly. "I don't understand, sir." "Let's be direct." Montgomery stood, moving to the window. "This essay discusses complex financial instruments, international market trends, and sophisticated hedging strategies. It's clearly beyond the scope of what someone of your background could produce independently." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice steady. "Everything in that essay is my own work, sir." Montgomery turned, his expression a mixture of condescension and what he might have thought was kindness. "Miss Collins, we understand that scholarship students often feel pressured to exceed expectations. But integrity is a cornerstone of Worthington Academy." He gestured to the Heritage Society Award. "We have standards to maintain." "Are you suggesting I cheated, sir?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "I'm suggesting that perhaps you had help, perhaps from one of your more advantaged classmates." He smiled thinly. "There's no shame in admitting it. Your circumstances are what they are." Sarah's fingers found the worn cover of her journal, drawing strength from its familiar texture. Inside were notes that could prove every point in her essay. Daily records of market fluctuations, crop futures calculations, and global trend analysis that would put some of their textbooks to shame. But revealing that would mean explaining why a simple farmer's daughter kept such detailed records. It would mean exposing the careful facade her father had built over decades. "I wrote that essay myself, sir," she said firmly. "Every word," Montgomery sighed, settling back behind his desk. "Very well, then you won't mind rewriting it." Under supervised conditions, of course, this Saturday here in my office. But, sir, Saturday is harvest. Miss Collins, he cut her off. If you wish to maintain your scholarship, you will be here Saturday morning. Some of us sacrificed a great deal to create opportunities for students like yourself. The least you can do is demonstrate your gratitude through compliance. His eyes flickered to a photograph on his wall, a younger version of himself, shaking hands with the school's founder, another testament to his carefully curated image of authority and tradition. Yes, sir, Sarah said quietly, rising from her chair. As she turned to leave, Montgomery spoke again. Oh, and Miss Collins, do try to keep your shoes clean. We may be charitable, but we do have appearances to maintain. Sarah closed the door behind her with careful control, though she wanted to slam it. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall for a moment, breathing deeply. Through the frosted glass, she could see Montgomery's silhouette as he returned to polishing his precious award. Her phone buzzed, a text from her father. Buyers from Singapore confirmed for next week. Need your projection reports. Sarah straightened, squaring her shoulders. Let Montgomery have his gleaming awards and polished pretensions. She had work to do, real work, that actually meant something. Saturday would come, and she would write an essay that would make her former economics professor at the online university proud. For now, though, she had to maintain the charade, just as her father had taught her. Success doesn't need to shout to be heard. The old farmall tractor sat at the edge of the south field, like a sentinel from another era, its red paint faded by decades of sun and weather. To visitors, it was just another piece of outdated equipment, a relic that reinforced their image of the struggling family farm. None of them ever looked closely enough to notice the subtle modifications, the sophisticated GPS guidance system disguised as rust-spotted panels, or the yield monitoring sensors masked by carefully maintained vintage gauges. Sarah ran her hand along the tractor's worn metal as she passed, a habit picked up from her father. The machine was a perfect metaphor for their entire operation. Old on the outside, cutting edge within. Ready for the conference call, John Collins emerged from the barn, tablet in hand. Unlike his public appearances in worn overalls and muddy boots, today he wore pressed khakis and a casual button-down shirt. In an hour, he would be video conferencing with agricultural technology investors from 3 continents. The projection. Reports are ready, Sarah said, pulling out her journal. I've included the impact of last month's weather pattern changes on the Asian markets. John nodded, pride evident in his eyes. Your mother started teaching you market analysis when you were still learning to read, he said softly. She always said understanding numbers was as important as understanding soil. The mention of her mother made Sarah's throat tight. I miss her explaining logarithms using seed spacing, she managed with a small smile. Inside the barn, past the carefully maintained facade of hay bales and old equipment, a hidden door led to their real office. The space was a stark contrast to its rustic shell. Multiple monitors displayed real-time market data, weather patterns, and crop analytics. A sophisticated hydroponic system along one wall tested new growing methods before implementing them in the main fields. The Singapore group is particularly interested in our drought-resistant corn yields, John said, settling into his ergonomic chair. Though, of course, they think they're dealing with a much larger corporation. Sarah checked the monitors, ensuring all the data feeds were current. Why do we keep hiding? She asked suddenly. Why not just tell everyone the truth? John was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing the edge of his wedding ring. Your mother and I built this from nothing, he said finally. Back then, nobody would take us seriously, just 2 young farmers with big dreams and student loans. We learned that sometimes being underestimated is an advantage. He gestured to the screens showing their various operations. People see what they expect to see. A small family farm can experiment with new techniques without drawing attention. A farmer's daughter can learn and grow without pressure or prejudice. At least, his expression darkened slightly. That was the idea. Sarah thought of Principal Montgomery's condescending smile. Maybe it's time for a change. Maybe, John agreed, surprising her, but change should come on our terms, not theirs. He checked his watch. The call starts in 10 minutes. Want to stay and watch their faces when they realize they're talking to a simple farmer? Sarah shook her head. I should head back. I have a calculus test, and apparently I need to prepare for a supervised essay writing this Saturday. John's eyebrows rose. The economics paper. Principal Montgomery doesn't believe I wrote it myself. Sarah's voice was bitter. He thinks I must have had help from my more advantaged classmates. John's expression hardened, but before he could respond, one of the monitors chimed with an incoming call notification. We'll discuss this later, he said, his tone suggesting the discussion would involve more than just talk. As Sarah walked back through the barn, she paused to look at the old tractor again. For years, it had been a symbol of their careful deception, the deliberate image of a modest farming family getting by. But maybe it was time for it to represent something else. The truth that appearances could be deceiving, that real worth, lay beneath the surface. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Everything okay after Montgomery's office? Sarah typed back a quick, tell you later, and headed for her car. As she drove towards school, she watched the morning sun illuminate their fields, making the irrigation sensors glitter like dew among the crops. Sometimes the hardest part of keeping a secret wasn't the hiding. It was knowing when the right moment had come to reveal it. The glossy pages of Worthington Academy's newest prospectus gleamed under the auditorium lights. Each student held a copy, fresh from the printer, its cover featuring a carefully curated image of the school's Georgian facade. Sarah flipped through it silently, noting the professional photos of students from prominent families, the careful emphasis on tradition and legacy, and the complete absence of any scholarship students from its pages. Worthington Academy has stood for excellence for over 100 years. Principal Montgomery's voice rang out from the podium. He held up his own copy of the prospectus like a preacher with a holy text. Our reputation rests not just on academic achievement, but on the caliber of our student body. Maya, sitting beside Sarah, rolled her eyes discreetly. Both girls had been excluded from the prospectus photoshoot last month, an oversight that fooled nobody. In an age where some institutions compromise their standards for the sake of diversity, Montgomery continued, his gaze sweeping across the auditorium before settling briefly on Sarah, Worthington remains committed to maintaining its prestigious heritage. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her fingers tightened. On the prospectus, on page 12, there was a feature about the school's economics program, including a photo of the same Heritage Society award that dominated Montgomery's office. The irony wasn't lost on her, which is why Montgomery's voice took on a sharper edge. We must address certain recent concerns about academic integrity. A murmur rippled through the assembled students. Sarah felt her chest tighten. We have always prided ourselves on honest achievement, on work that reflects genuine understanding, not borrowed expertise. He paused meaningfully. Those who find our curriculum challenging should seek appropriate help through approved channels, not resort to alternative methods. Maya's hand found Sarah's arm, squeezing gently in silent support. Around them, several students turned to stare, some smirking, others merely curious. The prospectus in your hands represents not just our school's past, but its future. Montgomery held the booklet higher. A future built on the foundations of privilege and responsibility. Those fortunate enough to join our community must understand the weight of that privilege. Sarah opened her journal discreetly, needing the comfort of its familiar pages. Between complex agricultural calculations and market analyses, she'd written her mother's favorite saying, "True worth grows in any soil." The words helped steady her now. This year's capital campaign, Montgomery continued, his tone warming, as he addressed the wealthier families, will focus on enhancing our legacy facilities. The Heritage Center renovation, generously supported by the Van Aldrich family. As he droned on about donation tiers and naming opportunities, Sarah studied the prospectus more closely. The paper stock alone probably cost more than a month's worth of feed for their livestock. Yet between its glossy pages, she saw nothing of real value, just empty promises and carefully staged photos. Remember, Montgomery's voice rose for his conclusion. You carry the Worthington name with you. Every action, every achievement reflects on our collective reputation. His gaze found Sarah again. Those who find this responsibility too challenging might be better served in other environments. The threat was clear, though carefully worded. As students began filing out of the auditorium, Sarah remained seated, letting the crowd thin. Maya stayed with her, their shoulders touching in solidarity. He's wrong, you know, Maya whispered. About all of it. Sarah nodded, watching Montgomery speak with a group of wealthy parents, the prospectus serving as a prop in his performance. He gestured to various pages, pointing out features that justified the school's astronomical tuition. My dad always says people who need to brag about their worth usually have the least to brag about, Maya added. Sarah thought of her father, probably on his video call right now, quietly transforming the agricultural industry while maintaining the appearance of a simple farmer. She thought of their modified tractor, their hidden office, their years of uncareful work. Sometimes, she said quietly, worth doesn't need a glossy cover to be real. As they finally stood to leave, Sarah deliberately left her copy of the prospectus on the seat. Let someone else be impressed by its empty promises. She had real work waiting for her, derivatives to calculate, market trends to analyze, and a Saturday essay to prepare for. Behind her, she could still hear Montgomery's voice, now explaining the school's selective admission process to an eager parent. She clutched her journal closer, feeling the weight of its honest pages against her heart. Soon enough, everyone would learn what real achievement looked like, and no amount of glossy prospectuses could hide the truth. The morning rain had turned Worthington's pristine courtyard into a maze of puddles. Sarah tried to avoid them as she hurried toward her locker, but her boots, still muddy from the pre-dawn farm check, left telltale marks on the polished marble floor. Oops, looks like someone forgot to wipe their feet. Victoria Van Aldrich's voice carried across the hallway. But I suppose proper etiquette isn't taught in barns. Sarah kept walking, her wet boots squeaking against the floor. After the assembly yesterday, she'd expected something like this. Victoria, whose family name graced half the buildings on campus, had been looking for an opportunity. "Hey, Collins," Victoria called louder. "Did you milk the cows before coming to school? Is that why you always smell like—" "That's enough, Victoria." Maya appeared beside Sarah, her own scholarship-approved shoes just as wet from the rain. Victoria's perfectly glossed lips curved into a cruel smile. "Oh, look, the charity cases are defending each other. How sweet." Sarah reached her locker, focusing on the combination lock rather than the growing crowd of onlookers. Her boots, caked with honest work and morning dew, seemed to mock the pristine hallway with every step. "I heard about your economics essay," Victoria continued, moving closer. "Daddy says Principal Montgomery was quite concerned about its authenticity. Though I suppose when you spend your time shoveling manure, you have to get help somewhere." Sarah's fingers tightened on her journal. Inside were pages of complex calculations that would make Victoria's head spin. Derivatives, market analyses, agricultural futures that could buy and sell her family's supposed fortune. "Tell me," Victoria's voice dripped with false concern, "do you even understand what you copied? Or did you just pick the biggest words you could find?" The gathering crowd tittered. Sarah felt heat rising in her cheeks, not from embarrassment but from anger. Years of maintaining the facade, of hiding their success, of playing the humble farmer's daughter, it all suddenly felt unbearably heavy. "You know nothing about me," Sarah said quietly, turning to face her tormentor. "Or my family, Victoria." laughed, high and artificial. "Oh, we know everything we need to know. The scholarship girl who thinks she can play in our league. The farmer's daughter who—" She broke off as Sarah took a deliberate step forward, her muddy boot leaving a perfect print on the marble floor. "My boots may be muddy, Victoria, but at least they've done honest work. When's the last time you created anything of value besides gossip?" The hallway fell silent. Even Maya looked surprised at Sarah's outburst. Victoria's face flushed red. "How dare you? Do you know who my family is? Do you know who mine is?" Sarah countered, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "Do you have any idea what we actually do? Or are you too busy polishing your family name to see beyond your own reflection?" "Is there a problem here?" Principal Montgomery's voice cut through the tension. He stood at the end of the hallway, taking in the scene with narrowed eyes. Victoria's expression shifted instantly to wounded innocence. "Sir, we were just discussing a proper school etiquette. Some students," she glanced pointedly at Sarah's boots, "seem to need remedial lessons." Montgomery's gaze followed Victoria's, his lip curling slightly at the muddy footprints. "Miss Collins, my office. Now." Sarah looked down at her boots, sturdy, practical, essential for her morning work. They represented everything Worthington Academy claimed to despise: honest labor, practical necessity, real-world achievement, rather than inherited privilege. She pulled out her phone. "What are you doing?" Montgomery demanded. "Calling my father," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "I think it's time he paid Worthington Academy a visit." The crowd's whispers grew louder. Montgomery's face darkened. "Miss Collins, if you think involving your father will help your situation—" "Oh, I know it will," Sarah cut him off, surprising everyone, including herself. "In fact, I think it's long overdue." As she dialed, she caught Maya's encouraging smile. Her boots had left their mark on Worthington's pristine floors, just as she was about to leave her mark on its precious reputation. "Dad," she said into the phone, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I think you should come to school. And Dad, bring the rolls." John Collins ended his video conference the moment he saw Sarah's text. In his private office, hidden behind the barn's weathered exterior, he opened a sleek safe concealed behind a vintage farming calendar. Inside lay a black leather portfolio, and the complete documentation of Collins' agricultural enterprise's true scope and value. He'd started compiling it the day Sarah was born, adding every achievement, every expansion, every innovation, not for vanity, but as a testament to prove that success could grow from humble soil. His wife had helped him organize it, insisting they document everything for when Sarah needs to know her true worth. Now, as he pulled out the portfolio, memories flooded back. The early days when banks wouldn't loan money to a simple farmer with ambitious dreams. The wealthy investors who dismissed his innovations because he didn't have the right connections. The gradual realization that being underestimated could be a powerful advantage. He opened the portfolio, pages crinkling with possibility. The first section held the original deed to their farm, purchased with student loans and desperate optimism. Beside it lay the patent documents for their first agricultural innovation, a more efficient irrigation system that now operated in 12 countries. "Collins Agricultural Enterprises," he read softly, tracing the embossed company logo. 500 employees across 3 continents, research partnerships with leading universities, a revolutionary seed development program that had changed farming in arid regions, all of it hidden behind the image of a modest family farm. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. "They're all waiting in the principal's office. Victoria Van Aldrich and her parents are here too." John smiled, remembering the Van Aldrich patriarch dismissing his crop rotation proposals at an agricultural conference years ago. "Too complex for simple farmers," he'd said, not realizing he was speaking to the system's inventor. He turned to the portfolio's financial section, banking statements showing assets that would make Victoria's family fortune look like pocket change. contracts with international distributors, stock holdings in agricultural technology companies around the world. A photo slipped from between the pages, his wife standing in their first greenhouse holding baby Sarah, both of them laughing. On the back she'd written, "Our greatest harvest is yet to come. Time to show them what we've grown," John murmured, gathering the portfolio. But first he had one more call to make. "James, get the Rolls-Royce ready and bring the documentation for the Worthington Academy land purchase." He smiled at the response. Yes, they'd quietly bought the land under the school 6 months ago through one of their subsidiary companies, another card to play if needed. In his bedroom, John changed from his casual business wear into his farmer's outfit, worn overalls and a faded plaid shirt. The contrast would make the revelation all the sweeter. He picked up his wife's favorite photo frame from the bedside table. "Wish you were here to see this, love," he said softly. "You always said Sarah would find her moment." The portfolio felt heavy in his hands. 15 years of hidden success, of careful maneuvering, of letting others underestimate them while building something extraordinary. Inside its pages lay the proof that would silence every sneer, every condescending remark, every dismissal of his daughter's abilities. His phone buzzed one final time. "Sarah again. They're making comments about your rustic charm. Please hurry." John tucked the portfolio under his arm and headed for the garage, where James waited with the Rolls-Royce Ghost, a car they used only for international business meetings, kept hidden in a special garage beneath the barn. As James opened the car door, John paused. "Bring the other portfolio too," he said, "the one with the educational foundation documents." Because this wasn't just about proving their worth, it was about changing the system that made such proof necessary. The Collins Family Educational Foundation would ensure that future students wouldn't have to hide their potential behind acceptable facades. As the Rolls-Royce pulled out of the hidden garage, John held the portfolio close. Soon, Principal Montgomery would learn that the simple farmer he'd been condescending to owned more agricultural patents than most universities. The Van Aldrichs would discover that their old money was a drop compared to the Collins family's quiet empire. But most importantly, his daughter would finally be able to stand tall, her achievements recognized, her intelligence respected, just as her mother had always wanted. "Time to show them what real cultivation looks like," John said, watching Worthington Academy's spires appear in the distance. In his hands, the portfolio held more than just business success. It held vindication, justice, and the fruit of years of patient growth. The Rolls-Royce Ghost glided to a stop before Worthington Academy's main entrance, its metallic silver finish gleaming in the late morning sun. Students pressed against classroom windows, drawn by the unusual sight of such luxury at their schools. Door. The car's presence alone was a statement, one that cost more than Principal Montgomery's annual salary. James, in his immaculate chauffeur's uniform, stepped out first. With practiced precision, he opened the rear door, standing at attention as John Collins emerged. The contrast was deliberate and striking, a man in worn overalls and muddy work, boots stepping out of one of the world's most expensive luxury vehicles. Through the office window, Sarah watched the ripple of confusion spread across the faces of those gathered in Montgomery's office. Victoria Van Aldrich's perfectly manicured hand flew to her mouth. Her father, Theodore Van Aldrich III, squinted as if trying to make sense of the scene before him. "Is that—" Principal Montgomery's voice trailed off as John Collins walked toward the entrance, each deliberate step of his work boots, on the marble steps a quiet declaration of coming change. "My father," Sarah confirmed, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "I believe you wanted to discuss my understanding of agricultural economics." The Ghost remained parked prominently in the circular drive, its Spirit of Ecstasy hood ornament catching the light. Students had begun to gather on the lawn, phones raised to capture the unexpected sight. The car was more than transportation. It was the first crack in the careful facade the Collins family had maintained for years. John's footsteps echoed through the hallway, steady and unhurried. Sarah heard whispers ripple through the gathered crowd. "That's the farmer. Is that really his car? Did you see the chauffeur?" The office door opened and John Collins stepped in, still in his farmer's attire but carrying himself with an authority that made even Theodore Van Aldrich straighten instinctively. "Mr. Collins," Montgomery began, his usual condescension wavering slightly, "this is unexpected, is it?" John's voice was calm, touched with subtle amusement. "I thought a discussion about my daughter's understanding of agricultural economics might benefit from a farmer's perspective." He moved to stand beside Sarah, his muddy boots leaving marks on the pristine carpet that matched her own. The ghost waited outside, visible through the window, a gleaming symbol of success that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. That's your car," Victoria finally managed, her perfectly cultivated composure cracking. "One of them," John replied mildly, "though I prefer the Bentley for everyday use. The ghost tends to draw attention, which we usually try to avoid. But today," he smiled at Sarah, "today feels like a good day for attention." Principal Montgomery had gone slightly pale, his eyes darting between John's worn overalls and the luxury car outside. "Mr. Collins, perhaps we should discuss this in private." "Why?" John's voice hardened slightly. "Wasn't this morning's assembly about transparency, about honest achievement and genuine understanding?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, deliberately worn and smudged with soil. "Though perhaps we should all be clear about who we're really talking to." He handed the card to Montgomery, who read it with widening eyes. Theodore Van Aldrich leaned over to look, his face going slack with recognition. You're that Collins?" Van Aldrich's voice cracked slightly. "Collins Agricultural Enterprises?" "The same," John confirmed, "though we do prefer to maintain a certain modest appearance. It helps us focus on what really matters." He looked at his daughter. "Like education, innovation, real achievement." Outside, the ghost continued to draw crowds, its presence transforming from a mystery into a message. Inside the office, years of careful obscurity were dissolving in the face of truth. Sarah stood straighter, feeling the weight of pretense falling away. The muddy boots that had drawn so much scorn now stood as badges of honor, proof that real success didn't need designer labels or polished veneers. The revelation was just beginning. Principal Montgomery turned the mud-stained business card over in his trembling hands. The simple white card, deliberately aged and worn, bore an elegant inscription beneath its soil marks. John Collins, CEO and founder, Collins Agricultural Enterprises. Below that, in smaller text, Innovating Global Agriculture. "I don't understand," Montgomery managed, his usually commanding voice reduced to a whisper. You're just a local farmer." "No," John replied, pulling out his leather portfolio. "I'm a very successful farmer. There's a difference." He placed the portfolio on Montgomery's pristine desk, letting some of the dirt from his hands mark the polished surface. "One you seem to have trouble grasping." Theodore Van Aldrich leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the portfolio. "Collins Agricultural Enterprises. You're the ones behind the new drought-resistant wheat strain. The solar-powered irrigation systems in Africa. Among other things," John nodded. "We find that real innovation often comes from understanding the soil, not just studying it in theory." He glanced at Victoria, who had gone very quiet. "Something your daughter might want to consider before mocking those who work with their hands." Sarah watched as her father opened the portfolio, revealing page after page of patents, contracts and financial statements. The same documents she'd helped compile and analyze, hidden in plain sight like everything else in their lives. A current market valuation," John said, sliding one paper toward Montgomery, "is approximately 12 times the entire endowment of Worthington Academy." He paused, letting that sink in. "Which, incidentally, we also own." "Own?" Montgomery's voice cracked. The land purchase went through 6 months ago, John confirmed. We thought it might be useful to have a say in the school's future, especially its scholarship programs. The Van Aldrichs exchanged alarmed looks. Their family had been trying to gain control of the school board for years, and now they learned that a simple farmer had quietly bought the entire property. But your daughter's on scholarship, Victoria blurted out, her carefully maintained poise crumbling. Yes, Sarah spoke up, finding her voice, because I earned it, with my grades, my test scores, and yes, my understanding of agricultural economics. She pulled out her worn journal. Every analysis in my essay came from real experience, real data, real work. While you were mocking my boots, I was helping manage a global enterprise. Montgomery's face had gone from pale to ashen. Mr. Collins, surely we can discuss this privately. Come to some arrangement. An arrangement? John's voice hardened. Like the one you made with the Van Aldrichs to phase out the scholarship program next year? Theodore Van Aldrich flinched. That decision hadn't been made public yet. Your Heritage Society Award, John continued, gesturing to the gleaming plaque on the wall, celebrates educational excellence and traditional values. Tell me, Principal Montgomery, what's more traditional than working hard and earning your place? What's more excellent than genuine achievement? He pulled another document from the portfolio, the deed to the school property. As the new landlord, I have some suggestions for Worthington's future, starting with a complete review of its leadership. The mud-stained business card still sat on Montgomery's desk, its dirty surface now a symbol of authentic success, rather than something to be ashamed of. Sarah reached out and picked it up, feeling its worn edges. My mother helped design this card, she said quietly. She said we should never be afraid of showing where we came from, even after we succeeded, that the dirt under our nails taught us more than any polished reputation. Victoria looked at her own manicured hands, then at Sarah's calloused ones. For the first time, something like understanding crossed her face. The world is changing, John said, addressing everyone in the room. Success doesn't wear designer labels anymore. Innovation doesn't care about your family name. And education, he smiled at his daughter, education should open doors, not build walls. The business card in Sarah's hand felt warm, as if it held not just their identity but their future. Outside, the Rolls-Royce ghost still drew crowds, but now it seemed less important than the mud on their boots and the truth in their hearts. The facade had crumbled, and something new was about to grow in its place. The social media post appeared minutes after John Collins walked into Worthington Academy. A shaky video showed the Rolls-Royce ghost arriving, followed by the farmer in his work boots stepping out. The caption read, OMG, Sarah Collins' dad just showed up in a Rolls. Principal Montgomery's face, priceless. Worthington drama, Jack farmer's daughter, Jack's plot twist. Within an hour, the video had spread through every student's phone, accompanied by a flood of comments and speculation. The carefully maintained social hierarchy of Worthington Academy was crumbling one notification at a time. Did you see this? Maya thrust her phone at Sarah as they left Montgomery's office. The original post had spawned dozens of others, each adding new details to the story. Someone had even started a thread connecting old news articles about Collins' agricultural enterprises with their local farmer identity. Your dad's trending, Maya scrolled through the comments. Look, someone found that article about the drought-resistant wheat strain. And here's a picture of your farm's solar panels. They thought they were just old equipment. Sarah watched the story of her family unfold through the lens of social media. Years of careful privacy shattered in an instant, replaced by a very public revelation. But strangely, she felt lighter, as if a weight had lifted. Down the hall, Victoria Van Aldrich stood with her usual group of followers, but the dynamic had shifted. The phones in their hands displayed various articles about Collins' agricultural enterprises, and their whispers had lost their mocking edge. Sarah, A younger student ran up, phone extended. "Is it true your dad invented that new irrigation system, the one we studied in environmental science?" Before she could answer, more students gathered around, their questions tumbling over each other. "Do you really help manage international contracts? Is that why you're so good at economics? Can you explain futures trading to me?" Maya grinned at her friend's overwhelmed expression. "Looks like your cover's officially blown." A new post appeared, this one from Jessica Chen, captain of the USB debate team. "Maybe next time we judge someone, we should remember the Collins story. Real success doesn't need designer labels. Lesson learned, just respect the work." The post was already gaining traction, shared by students and parents alike. Each share added new perspectives. "My mom says Collins Agricultural Enterprises revolutionized farming in drought regions. Their sustainable agriculture programs have helped thousands of small farmers. All this time they were quietly changing the world while we judged their boots." In the main office, the secretary's phone rang constantly as local media caught wind of the story. The contrast was irresistible. The humble farmer revealed as a global innovator, the mocked student vindicated in the most dramatic way. Sarah's own phone buzzed with a message from her father. "Your mother would be proud. Time to be fully who you are." She smiled, remembering all the times her mother had helped her stay strong, had reminded her that their choice to live simply didn't make them any less accomplished. Now, through the viral spread of their story, that lesson was reaching far beyond their family. Principal Montgomery remained in his office, blinds drawn, as the social media storm raged outside. The Van Aldrichs had left quickly, their usual, commanding presence diminished by the revelation. But their hasty exit had been captured on video too, already adding to the growing narrative. "Look at this." Maya pointed to a new post from one of the scholarship students. "Collins' family proves success comes from work, not wealth. Maybe Worthington needs more students who understand real value. Change is coming." The hashtag, Change is coming, was gaining momentum, moving beyond just their story to touch on broader issues of privilege, assumption, and true merit. The viral post that had started with a Rolls-Royce was becoming something more, a catalyst for conversation about what really defined success. Sarah closed her journal, no longer needing to hide its complex contents. Around her, Worthington Academy buzzed with new energy, as if the very air had changed. The truth had gone viral, and there was no turning back. In her pocket, her father's mud-stained business card pressed against her phone. Old and new, tradition and change, finally. Meeting in the open. The local newspaper's website crashed 3 times that afternoon, as people rushed to read the hastily published article. Local farmer revealed as agricultural innovation giant. The truth behind Collins Enterprises. The piece, written by veteran reporter Marcus Chen, coincidentally Maya's father, laid out the full story with the careful detail of someone who had suspected there was more to the Collins family all along. "In an age of flashy tech billionaires and social media entrepreneurs," the article began, "one of the most influential agricultural innovators of our time has been quietly working from a modest farm on the outskirts of our town. John Collins, known to most as simply the farmer down on Route 7, is actually the founder and CEO of Collins Agricultural Enterprises, a company valued at over $12 billion. Sarah read the article during lunch, sitting with Maya in their usual quiet corner of the cafeteria. The space around them, usually empty due to their scholarship student status, was now filled with curious classmates trying to appear casual, while stealing glances at their phones. "Dad's been wanting to write this story for years," Maya said, grinning. "He always said there was something different about your farm's crop yields." The article continued. "The Collins story challenges our assumptions about success in modern America. While maintaining the appearance of a small family farm, Collins Agricultural Enterprises has developed revolutionary farming technologies now used in 47 countries. Their drought-resistant crop strains have helped feed millions. Their sustainable irrigation systems have transformed agriculture in arid regions. A section followed about Sarah's mother, making her throat tight. The late Elizabeth Collins, a brilliant agricultural economist, worked alongside her husband to build more than just a company. They created a model of success based on substance over show, innovation over inheritance, and the radical idea that true worth grows best away from the spotlight. Principal Montgomery's secretary appeared at their table, looking flustered. "Miss Collins, the school board is requesting an emergency meeting. They'd like you and your father to attend." Sarah nodded, unsurprised. The article had revealed that Collins Agricultural Enterprises now owned not just Worthington Academy's land, but significant agricultural property throughout the state. The board would have questions. Her phone buzzed with messages from agricultural programs at top universities, each having finally connected brilliant research papers published under E.S. Collins with the quiet student who had never drawn attention to her achievements. The article's next section detailed the company's educational initiatives. Perhaps most remarkable is the Collins family's commitment to agricultural education. Their scholarship programs, previously anonymous, have funded agricultural research. At 12 universities, their innovative farming techniques are shared freely with small farmers worldwide, prioritizing global food security over profit. "Miss Collins," a timid voice interrupted her reading. It was Victoria Van Aldrich, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I wanted to apologize. And maybe, could you explain that thing about futures markets? The part from your essay? I actually want to understand." Sarah looked at the girl who had mocked her that very morning, seeing past the designer uniform to someone who might be ready to learn. "Pull up a chair," she said. "It's actually fascinating once you understand the basic principles." As she began explaining agricultural economics to an increasingly interested group of students, Sarah noticed her father through the cafeteria window. He was walking the school grounds with James, pointing out potential locations for something. Knowing him, probably planning improvements that would benefit everyone, not just the wealthy students. The article's conclusion seemed to sum up the day perfectly. In an era obsessed with image and instant gratification, the Collins family chose substance over show, patience over prominence. Their revelation today does more than expose a hidden success story. It challenges us to question our assumptions about worth, work, and wisdom. Perhaps there are more quiet revolutionaries among us, changing the world without seeking the spotlight. Perhaps the next great innovation will come not from a glossy tech campus, but from someone with dirt under their nails and determination in their heart. Sarah closed the browser on her phone, turning her attention to Victoria's questions about crop futures. The article had done its job, not just revealing their story, but highlighting the values that had shaped it. Around her, Worthington Academy hummed with new energy, as if the truth had fertilized the very ground beneath them. Change was growing, and like everything else the Collins family cultivated, it would have deep roots. Emergency meeting minutes. Worthington Academy Board of Trustees. Date, October 15th. Time, 4:30 p.m. Location, main conference room. The leather-bound minute book lay open on the conference table, its pages ready to record what would surely be one of the most significant meetings in Worthington Academy's history. Sarah watched as the board secretary's pen moved across the paper, documenting each revelation with meticulous care. Present, Board of Trustees, 12 members. Principal Charles Montgomery John Collins, property owner. Sarah Collins, student representative. Theodore Van Aldrich III, board chairman. "Let the record show," board chairman Van Aldrich began, his voice lacking its usual authority, "that this emergency session was called to address the unexpected developments regarding the school's property ownership and certain policy matters." John Collins sat quietly, still in his work clothes, looking entirely comfortable despite the tension in the room. The contrast between his muddy boots and the room's expensive carpeting seemed to emphasize every point they were about to discuss. "First item," Van Aldrich continued, glancing nervously at his notes, "the matter of the property acquisition by Collins Agricultural Enterprises." "Yes," John interjected calmly. "Perhaps we should discuss why the board was planning to eliminate the scholarship program without proper stakeholder consultation." The secretary's pen hesitated, then dutifully recorded his words. Sarah noticed several board members shift uncomfortably in their seats. Principal Montgomery attempted to speak, but John raised his hand. "The minutes should reflect that my company's purchase of the school property was specifically motivated by this planned policy change. We believe in protecting educational opportunities, not restricting them." The secretary wrote faster, capturing every word. These minutes would become more than a record. They would be a testament to the moment Worthington Academy began to transform. "Mr. Collins," one board member ventured, "given your company's substantial resources, why maintain the pretense? Why allow your daughter to face discrimination?" Sarah answered before her father could. "Because it revealed the truth about this institution. Every sneer, every dismissal, every act of prejudice proved exactly why change is needed." The pen scratched across the page. "Student S. Collins raises concerns regarding institutional bias and discrimination." John nodded at his daughter with pride. "The minutes should record that Collins Agricultural Enterprises proposes the following changes. First, expansion of the scholarship program to cover 30% of the student body. Second, implementation of an agricultural science program focusing on sustainable innovation. Third, immediate review of current administration's alignment with these new priorities." Principal Montgomery's face paled. The secretary captured his reaction with a diplomatic. "Principal Montgomery expresses concern regarding proposed changes. Additionally," John continued, "we propose establishing the Elizabeth Collins Memorial Scholarship, specifically for students from farming communities. My late wife believed that innovation grows best in soil, enriched by real experience." The minutes grew denser as the meeting continued, recording each proposal, each shift in the power dynamic. Sarah noticed Victoria Van Aldrich and several other students watching through the conference room's glass walls, their expressions a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "Let the record show," John said firmly, "that these changes are not suggestions. As the property owner and a significant stakeholder in this institution's future, Collins Agricultural Enterprises will ensure that Worthington Academy becomes a place where true merit outweighs inherited privilege." The secretary's pen captured it all. The end of one era, the beginning of another. Pages that had previously recorded discussions of exclusivity and tradition now documented a revolution in values. "Final item," John concluded, "the minutes should reflect that Principal Montgomery's leadership will be reviewed by an independent committee, with particular attention to his handling of scholarship students and accusations of academic dishonesty." Montgomery seemed to shrink in his chair as the secretary recorded his professional fate in permanent ink. "Meeting adjourned," Van Aldrich announced weakly, his gavel tap barely audible. As the board members filed out, Sarah lingered to watch the secretary complete the minutes. These pages would be more than institutional memory. They would be a blueprint for transformation, a record of the day when pretense yielded to authenticity. Her father's muddy boots had left marks on the carpet, physical reminders that would fade. But the words in the minute book would remain, testifying that true change often comes from unexpected sources, and that sometimes the most powerful statements are written not in grand declarations, but in the simple documentation of truth finally spoken aloud. Sarah sat cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by a semicircle of college acceptance letters. Each envelope bore the crest of a prestigious university: Stanford's Agricultural Sciences Program, Cornell's School of Agriculture and Life Sciences, MIT's Environmental Engineering Department, schools that had practically begged her to join their research programs once her true identity emerged. "You could leave, you know," Maya said, sitting beside her friend. "After everything that's happened, nobody would blame you." Sarah picked up Stanford's letter, remembering how her mother used to tell stories about their research partnerships there. The acceptance package included a personal note mentioning Elizabeth Collins's contributions to their sustainable farming initiatives. "Running away isn't really the Collins family style," Sarah replied, setting the letter down. "Mum always said that real growth happens in challenging soil." Her phone buzzed with another message, this time from Victoria Van Aldrich. Of all people, study group for economics tomorrow? Some of us actually want to learn about agricultural futures now. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. The same students who had mocked her farmer's daughter knowledge now wanted to understand it. Their interest felt genuine, born of realization rather than fear or social climbing. Besides, she continued gathering the letters into a neat stack. "There's work to be done here." Through her bedroom window, she could see the lights of their high-tech barn, where her father was probably on another video call with international partners. The familiar sight carried new meaning now. No more hiding, no more pretending their success was smaller than it was. "Dad's implementing those changes at Worthington," she explained. "The new agricultural science program, the expanded scholarship opportunities. They'll need someone who understands both worlds to help bridge the gap." Maya nodded, understanding, teaching the privileged to get their hands dirty. "Teaching everyone that worth isn't about where you come from," Sarah corrected, "but what you cultivate in yourself." She opened her journal, its pages now filled with both past records and future plans. Between market analyses and crop yield and data, she'd started sketching ideas for the new school programs, ways to combine traditional agricultural knowledge with modern innovation, just as her family had always done. Another message lit up her phone. A group chat from her former tormentors, now asking about internship opportunities at Collins Agricultural Enterprises. The change in their attitude wasn't just about social status. They'd glimpsed a world bigger than their privileged bubble, and they wanted to understand it. "What about your college plans?" Maya asked, gesturing to the acceptance letters. Sarah smiled, pulling out a different letter, one from the state university just 30 minutes away. "I can study agricultural engineering here," she said. "Close enough to help with both the farm and the school. Mom always said education should serve a purpose beyond yourself." She thought about Principal Montgomery, now on administrative leave pending review. About the Van Aldrich family, learning to adapt to a new social order. About the scholarship students who would now have opportunities that didn't require hiding their true selves. "The most important lessons," she read from her mother's old notes in the journal, "grow in the fields, not the classroom. But when you combine both, that's when innovation truly blossoms." Maya helped her pin the acceptance letters to her bulletin board, not as escape routes, but as reminders that choices should be made from strength, not fear. Among them, she placed her mother's old student ID from her agricultural economics days, its edges worn with time and love. "So," Maya grinned, "ready to revolutionize Worthington Academy?" Sarah looked at her work boots by the door, no longer a source of shame, but a badge of pride. "One seed at a time," she replied, "just like everything else worth growing." The firm acceptance letters caught the evening light, their official seals gleaming with possibility. But it was her journal, filled with real work and honest dreams, that held her attention. Sometimes the biggest decisions weren't about leaving or staying. They were about transforming the ground beneath your feet. Principal Charles Montgomery sat at his desk late into the evening, staring at the blank resignation letter template on his computer screen. The cursor blinked accusingly, waiting for words that would acknowledge 2 decades of misguided leadership. Behind him, the Heritage Society Award had already been packed away, its absence leaving a telling shadow on the wall. "Dear Board of Trustees," he typed, then deleted it. "To the Worthington Academy community," he tried again, then deleted that too. How does one admit to years of perpetuating the very prejudices you were supposed to challenge? A knock at his door interrupted his struggle. "Come in," he called, expecting another board member with more questions about his conduct. Instead, John Collins entered, still in his work clothes despite the late hour. Montgomery noticed he didn't flinch at the mud on the man's boots anymore. "Working late?" John asked, though they both knew why Montgomery was there. "Trying to find the right words," Montgomery admitted, gesturing to the screen, "though I'm not sure they exist." John pulled up a chair, its leather creaking in the quiet office. "You know, when I first started Collins Agricultural Enterprises, most banks wouldn't give me the time of day, said a farmer couldn't understand global markets." He smiled slightly. "Their rejection letters taught me something important about prejudice. It blinds not just the heart, but the mind." Montgomery turned to his computer and began to type. "To the Worthington Academy community, I write this letter not just to resign my position as principal, but to acknowledge a fundamental failure in my leadership. For too long, I have confused privilege with worth, tradition with excellence, and social status with genuine achievement. The recent revelations regarding the Collins family have forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about my own prejudices and their impact on our educational mission. I failed to see that true merit often grows in unexpected places, and that authentic achievement rarely requires external validation. To Sarah Collins and every other student I have underestimated or marginalized, I offer my deepest apology. Your resilience in the face of my bias speaks to a strength of character I am only now beginning to understand. To the parents who entrusted their children's education to my care, I apologize for promoting a culture that valued appearance over substance. A true educator should nurture potential wherever it grows, not just in carefully manicured gardens. To the faculty who tried to advocate for a more inclusive approach, I regret dismissing your concerns in favor of maintaining an outdated status quo. As I step down, I do so with a profound appreciation for the lessons this experience has taught me. Worthington Academy deserves leadership that understands that excellence can come from any background, that innovation often grows from challenging soil, and that true education should break down barriers, not reinforce them. The Collins family has shown us that success is not about pedigree, but perseverance, not about social status, but substance. Their story will serve as a reminder long after my tenure is forgotten. Effective immediately, I resign my position as Principal of Worthington Academy. I do so not in shame, but in hope that my departure will allow this institution to grow in new and more inclusive directions. Sincerely, Charles Montgomery. He finished typing and sat back, feeling both drained and oddly lightened. "May I?" John asked, gesturing to the screen. Montgomery nodded. As John read, his expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes softened. "You know," he said finally, "the hardest crop to harvest is our own pride. I've had plenty of that," Montgomery replied quietly. "Yes, but you're doing something harder than resigning," John observed. "You're learning. That's worth more than any Heritage Society award." Montgomery looked at the empty space on his wall. "Will you tell Sarah? Tell her I'm sorry? Really sorry?" "Tell her yourself," John suggested. "She's helping develop the new agricultural science curriculum. She could probably use an experienced educator's perspective, one who's learned the value of seeing beyond surfaces." Montgomery blinked in surprise. "You'd want my involvement? After everything?" "Growth requires good soil," John said, standing. "Even if that soil needs some adjustment first." He headed for the door, then paused. "By the way, that irrigation system you mocked in Sarah's essay, it's helping feed millions. Imagine what other innovations we miss when we judge too quickly." Left alone, Montgomery turned back to his resignation letter. He added one final line, "P.S. To future educators, judge not by the mud on their boots but by the seeds they plant. He clicked send, then began packing up his office. Through his window, he could see the lights of the Collins farm in the distance, glowing like stars against the dark sky. For the first time, he saw them not as signs of rural simplicity, but as beacons of innovation and authentic achievement. Sometimes he realized the best lessons come after you think you're done teaching. The new Worthington Academy policy document lay open on the conference room table, its fresh pages outlining a vision that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. "Building excellence through inclusion," read the header, followed by bullet points that transformed the school's century-old approach to education. Sarah sat with the policy committee, which now included students from diverse backgrounds, watching as final revisions were made to the document that would reshape their school's future. Section 3, Merit-Based Opportunities, read Maya, who had been elected as student representative. All students, regardless of background or financial status, will have equal access to advanced programs, leadership positions, and internship opportunities. Victoria Van Aldrich, surprisingly part of the committee, added, "We should explicitly mention agricultural innovation programs. The Collins Enterprise internships are already oversubscribed." The former social queen bee had undergone, perhaps, the most visible transformation. Now, she arrived at school early to help with the new greenhouse project, her designer clothes replaced by practical workwear during hands-on sessions. The Elizabeth Collins Memorial Lab is scheduled to open next semester, Sarah noted, checking her tablet. "We'll need policies for the Sustainable Agriculture Research Program." The policy document's pages reflected each change: expanded scholarship funding, new STEM initiatives focused on agricultural innovation, community outreach programs connecting wealthy students with farming communities. What had started as a revelation about one family had grown into a complete institutional transformation. "Look at this," Maya whispered, showing Sarah her phone. Pictures were circulating of yesterday's field trip to the Collins farm, where former elite students learned about soil composition and crop management alongside scholarship students. In one photo, Victoria helped calibrate irrigation sensors, her face bright with genuine interest. The policy committee continued its work, adding sections about environmental responsibility and global awareness. Sarah's father had insisted that Worthington's new direction should extend beyond its walls, creating partnerships with schools worldwide. "We should add something about the mentorship program," suggested James Chen, Maya's father, now head of the school's journalism department. "The way senior students are helping newcomers adjust, especially those from farming backgrounds." Sarah thought about the study groups that had formed spontaneously, breaking down old social barriers. Students who once mocked her agricultural knowledge now sought her expertise, not from fear or social climbing, but from genuine respect and interest. The policy document's final section addressed culture and values. Worthington Academy recognizes that true excellence grows from diverse experiences and perspectives. We commit to nurturing an environment where achievement is measured by innovation, effort, and impact, rather than background or privilege. As the committee worked, Sarah could see students in the new agricultural laboratory across the courtyard. Through the glass walls, former social cliques had dissolved into collaborative teams, working together on sustainable farming projects. The Heritage Society Award that once dominated the principal's office had been replaced by displays of student innovations. "We need to address the uniform policy," Victoria said unexpectedly. "The old rules about appropriate shoes and clothes. They don't make sense for students doing real work in the labs and greenhouses." Sarah smiled, remembering how her muddy boots had once drawn sneers. Now, practical footwear was common as students moved between traditional classrooms and hands-on learning spaces. The policy document concluded with a new school motto, "Growing Tomorrow's Leaders Today." Simple words that carried the weight of real change, not just in rules, but in hearts and minds. As the meeting ended, Sarah lingered to watch students leaving their last classes. Through the window, she saw a group heading to the parking lot. Scholarship students and former elites walking together, discussing project ideas and sharing notes. The artificial boundaries that had once divided them had dissolved like morning frost under the sun of shared purpose. "Your mother would love this," her father said, appearing beside her. He'd been meeting with international agricultural partners in the new conference center, where students could observe real-world business negotiations. Sarah nodded, touching the journal in her pocket. The same journal that had once hidden her knowledge now served as a teaching tool in advanced agricultural economics classes. Outside, the afternoon sun caught the new sign at the school's entrance. Worthington Academy, where innovation grows. Beyond it, the Collins Farms fields stretched toward the horizon, a living laboratory where the next generation would learn that true worth grows best when everyone has room to flourish. The annual class photo session at Worthington Academy had always been a carefully orchestrated affair, with students arranged by social status and family connections. But this year's photograph told a different story. Posted prominently in the main hall, it captured the transformation that had taken root in the school's culture. Instead of the traditional formal arrangement on the marble steps, this year's photo was taken in the new Elizabeth Collins Memorial Garden. Students stood naturally mixed together, their usual uniforms adapted for practical work. Some wore lab coats from the agricultural research program, others had mud on their boots from the morning's field studies. Victoria Van Aldrich stood next to Maya Chen, both holding tablets displaying their shared research project on sustainable irrigation. "I almost can't believe that was just taken last week," Maya said, studying the photo with Sarah. "Remember how last year they made all the scholarship students stand in the back?" Sarah nodded, noting how even the photographer's composition had changed. Instead of highlighting the traditional symbols of Worthington's prestige, the image centered on the students' work. The new greenhouse gleamed in the background, its innovative design a testament to the school's new direction. "Check this out," called Jason Thompson, a former football star who now led the Agricultural Engineering Club. He pointed to his group. In the photo, where students from various backgrounds clustered around a model of their award-winning vertical farming system. The photo had captured genuine moments rather than posed perfection. Emily Torres, whose family worked as migrant farmers before settling locally, was explaining soil chemistry to former social elite Rebecca Winchester. Their shared enthusiasm was obvious even in the frozen image. "My dad framed this for his office," Victoria said, joining them. She'd stopped wearing her designer accessories, finding them impractical for the hands-on work she'd grown to love. He says it reminds him that real change is possible. The photo seemed to reveal new details each time they looked at it. In one corner, former Principal Montgomery, now a consultant for the agricultural education program, engaged with students about their research. His humility and willingness to learn had earned him a different kind of respect than his former authority. "Look at the international students," Maya pointed out. Young people from farming communities worldwide now studied at Worthington through the Collins Agricultural Innovation Scholarship, bringing diverse perspectives and traditional farming wisdom to merge with modern technology. Sarah spotted herself in the image, standing with her research team. She was wearing her work boots proudly, her journal visible in her pocket. The camera had caught her mid-explanation, sharing the expertise she no longer needed to hide. "Ms. Rodriguez wants to use this for the new prospectus," Victoria mentioned. "She says it shows what Worthington really stands for now." The new admissions director had revolutionized the school's recruitment process, seeking students with innovative ideas and diverse experiences rather than just wealth or social connections. The results showed in the photo's composition, a genuine community rather than a hierarchy. Through the window, they could see current students moving between classes. The old social boundaries had dissolved so naturally that new students probably couldn't imagine they had ever existed. Scholarship students and legacy admissions collaborated on projects, their differences becoming strengths rather than barriers. "Oh, here's something cool," Maya said, pulling out her phone. "The photo's being featured in an education journal article about transformative institutional change. They're calling it the Worthington Revolution." Sarah smiled, remembering the day everything changed. Her father's arrival in the Rolls-Royce had sparked more than just a revelation. It had planted seeds of change that continued to grow. The afternoon sun caught the photo's glass, briefly overlaying their reflections on the image. Sarah saw how they too had changed. Victoria's proud posture now came from achievement rather than privilege. Maya's confidence shone through her innovative research rather than conformity to social expectations. Her own quiet strength no longer needed to hide behind careful facades. A group of younger students stopped to look at the photo, pointing out details with enthusiasm. "Is it true," one asked Sarah, "that people used to care more about what you wore than what you knew?" "Different times," Sarah replied, watching them huddle around their latest project designs. "Now we grow something better." The class photo hung as more than just a record of faces. It documented a transformation, capturing the moment when Worthington Academy had redefined what excellence truly meant. In its reflection, they could all see themselves not as they had been, but as they had become. Students and teachers, innovators and learners, all growing together in newly fertile ground. The Collins Family Educational Foundation Charter gleamed with fresh ink, its carefully worded mission statement capturing a vision that had grown far beyond Worthington Academy's walls. Sarah traced her finger over the document's opening lines. "To nurture innovation where it grows naturally, breaking down barriers between traditional agriculture and modern education." Her father's signature stood beside her own at the bottom of the charter, marking the moment when their family's private revolution became a public mission. With an initial endowment that made the Van Aldrich fortune look modest, the foundation promised to transform agricultural education across the country. "The first round of scholarship applications is incredible," Maya said, scrolling through her tablet. As the Foundation's first student board member, she had been reviewing submissions all week. Listen to this one. A girl in Kansas developed an AI system for predicting crop diseases, running it from her family's barn. Sarah smiled, remembering her own hidden technological innovations. "Send her an invitation to the Summer Innovation Workshop," she said, "and make sure she knows she doesn't have to hide her brilliance anymore." The Foundation's headquarters occupied a renovated barn on the Collins farm, its traditional exterior concealing state-of-the-art facilities within, much like the family's original operation. Inside, screens displayed real-time data from partner farms worldwide, while students from diverse backgrounds collaborated on agricultural innovations. Victoria entered, carrying architectural plans for the Foundation's next project, the satellite. "Campus proposals are ready for review," she announced. Her newfound passion for agricultural engineering had surprised everyone, most of all herself. "We've identified potential sites in 3 farming communities." The Charter's impact section outlined their ambitious goals, establishing agricultural innovation centers in rural communities, creating scholarship programs that bridge the gap between farming expertise and technological education, and developing curricula that valued both traditional knowledge and modern innovation. "Your mother would be proud," John said, joining them. He had just returned from a global agriculture conference, where the Foundation's model had received international attention. "She always said education should grow in every kind of soil." Sarah opened her journal, no longer a hiding place, but a blueprint for change. Its pages now contained plans for educational programs, sketches of innovation centers, and notes from meetings with agricultural ministers from developing nations. The first Elizabeth Collins scholars have been selected, Maya reported, pulling up another document. 20 students from farming backgrounds, each with unique innovations. The girl who developed drought-resistant irrigation for her tribal lands in Arizona. The twins from Iowa who revolutionized organic pest control. The foundation charter specified that each scholarship recipient would be paired with both a scientific mentor and an experienced farmer, honoring the blend of practical wisdom and innovation that had built Collins Agricultural Enterprises. Through the window, Sarah could see a group touring the demonstration fields. Executives from major agricultural corporations walking alongside farmers in work boots, learning from each other. The foundation had made such interactions commonplace, breaking down barriers that had once seemed permanent. "We received an interesting letter," John said, pulling out his tablet. "Charles Montgomery is requesting to establish a similar program. In his new position at the State Agricultural Extension Office, he wants to replicate our model of inclusive agricultural education." Sarah considered this news. The former principal's journey from prejudice to understanding had become its own kind of lesson. Approve it, she decided. Growth can happen in unexpected places. Victoria nodded in agreement, remembering her own transformation. Speaking of growth, the first harvest from the student-run experimental fields is ready. The results are beyond our projections. The Foundation Charter's final section, titled Measuring Success, spoke not of profits or prestige, but of lives transformed, innovations shared, and barriers broken. Each signature on the document represented a commitment to nurturing potential, wherever it grew. As the afternoon sun slanted through the barn's windows, Sarah watched young innovators working in the fields, their diverse backgrounds united by shared purpose. The foundation had become more than a scholarship program. It was a movement, transforming not just education, but attitudes about worth, work, and wisdom. "Next week's board meeting will be interesting," Maya commented. "The Van Aldrich Foundation wants to partner on the Rural Technology Initiative." Sarah smiled at the irony. The same families who had once dismissed farmers as simple and backward now sought to join their educational revolution. The Foundation Charter had achieved something remarkable. It had made excellence accessible while proving that true innovation could grow anywhere. "Time to review the new applications?" Victoria asked, already pulling up the files. Sarah nodded, opening her journal to a fresh page. There were more seeds to plant, more barriers to break, more potential to nurture. The Foundation Charter had given their family's story a purpose beyond vindication. It had turned a moment of revelation into a legacy of transformation. Sarah stood at the podium in her graduation robes, her valedictorian speech notes resting beside her well-worn journal. The audience before her reflected the changes that had transformed Worthington Academy. Scholarship students sat alongside, legacy families, work boots mixed with dress shoes, and every face showed the same anticipation. "4 years ago," she began, "I stood in this hall hiding who I really was. Today, I stand here celebrating who we've all become. Our class photo might show the physical changes to Worthington Academy, but the real transformation lives in our hearts and minds." She glanced at her father in the front row, still in his work clothes after checking the morning's crops. Beside him sat Victoria's family, the Van Aldrichs, now proud supporters of the agricultural innovation program their daughter would lead after college. "We learned that excellence doesn't wear designer labels. Innovation doesn't care about your family name. And success, real success, grows best in soil enriched by diverse experiences and authentic effort." Maya, co-valedictorian and bound for MIT's agricultural engineering program, gave her a thumbs up from the front row. Their shared journey from outsiders to leaders had helped shape Worthington's new direction. "My mother used to say that the best seeds can grow anywhere if given the chance. Through the Collins Foundation, we're making sure those chances exist for everyone." Next year, 50 new scholars from farming communities worldwide will join Worthington's incoming class. They'll bring their own knowledge, their own innovations, their own dreams of transformation. Former Principal Montgomery, now a respected advocate for educational equity, nodded from his seat among the faculty. His own journey of understanding had become part of the school's teaching philosophy. But perhaps our greatest achievement isn't in the programs we've built or the barriers we've broken. It's in learning to see beyond surfaces, to value substance over show, to understand that true worth often grows in unexpected places. Sarah picked up her journal, holding it up for all to see. This journal once hid my knowledge of agricultural economics. Today, it helps write new chapters in educational innovation. Like the Collins Farm, like Worthington Academy, like each of us, it proves that authenticity is more powerful than pretense. Victoria, wearing her innovation team captain's cord over her graduation robe, wiped away tears. Her own transformation, from privileged antagonist to passionate advocate, had inspired many others to reconsider their prejudices. As we leave these halls, we carry with us more than diplomas. We carry the understanding that real change starts with honest self-reflection. That leadership means lifting others up, not holding them down. That innovation can wear muddy boots and still change the world. In the audience, James from the Rolls-Royce waited beside the car that had sparked their revolution. But now it seemed less important than the fields beyond, where next year's students would learn to blend traditional wisdom with modern technology. My father taught me that success doesn't need to shout to be heard. My mother showed me that education should serve something greater than ourselves. And you, my classmates, proved that transformation is possible when we have the courage to be authentically ourselves. Sarah closed her journal, looking out at the faces that had changed from tormentors to teammates, from judges to friends. We entered Worthington divided by assumptions. We leave united by understanding, and that might be the greatest lesson of all. The applause that followed wasn't just for her words. It was for every student who had found their voice, every prejudice overcome, every barrier broken. As Sarah returned to her seat, she caught her father's proud smile. The same smile she'd seen the day he arrived in the Rolls-Royce, ready to challenge not just Worthington Academy, but the very notion of what success could look like. The future stretched before them like freshly planted fields, full of promise and possibility. They had learned that true worth, like the best crops, grows strong when given room to flourish in authentic soil, and that was a lesson worth cultivating.